For the academic year starting 2025, college students paid an average of around $25,000 for 1 year of tuition and fees at public universities, and almost twice that at private universities. So if you wanted to have 4 years of tuition and fees up front, it would set you back around $100,000 for a public college education. That's a steep price for most people. But what if you're not most people? What if you're a pirate who has only Spanish doubloons to his name? Or a Y2K prepper that's been underground for a quarter century? Or you're a dragon sitting on her hoard of golden jewels looking to send her dragon daughter to higher education? Well, at current gold prices of around $3,700 per troy ounce, that comes to around 27 troy ounces, or 840 grams, or 1.8 pounds. This is what 100 grams of gold looks like, so imagine 8 of these. That's what it would cost you on average for 4 years of just tuition, not including housing, personal expenses, or transport. But what did it cost in the past? From here on out, I'll be using the averages of the tuitions of the 8 Ivy League universities to provide as much as possible of an apples to apples comparison in the preceding years. Mostly because they're old as fuck. They predate the American Revolution, with the exception of Cornell, which only predates the state of Nebraska. And yes, I'm aware that Ivy League colleges will generally make sure you graduate with little or minimal debt, but if you have 2 pounds of gold lying around, you're probably not qualifying for assistance from the school. So the average tuition of an Ivy League college this year is $67,300, which amounts to around $250,000, or at 2025 gold prices, 2.2 kilograms for 4 years. 5 years ago, the average tuition was a bit cheaper, at an average of $57,000, but gold was much, much cheaper at an average around $2,000 per troy ounce. This meant that 4 years in an Ivy League school would set you back nearly 3.7 kilos of gold instead of 2.2. This is the approximate cost of an average 4 years tuition at an Ivy since 1945, as measured in grams of gold. So let's go back to the hypothetical Y2K prepper. Let's say you've been holed up for 25 years. You know that when society starts to reform, guns and knowledge will be paramount. So over the course of 1999, you buy enough gold to pay for 4 years of your kid's tuition at an Ivy, the logistics of running a university after total societal collapse aside. That's around 10.8 kilos of gold, almost 19,000 hours of work at the then federal minimum wage of $5.15 per hour. Again, that's compared to 2.2 kilos in 2025. With what you've gathered, you could just about afford to send 5 of your kids to an Ivy in 2025. But on the other hand, let's say it's 1980. The economy is going to shit, and you decide to bury some gold in your backyard so your grandkids can survive the post-nuclear winter. In 1980, you would be spending an average of just around $6,000 per year for tuition, so you'd only need to bury around 1.2 kilos of gold. 45 years later, when you did it up, it would cover maybe 2 years of tuition and fees for your grandkids. On the bright side, it would only have cost you around $7,700 of work at minimum wage to buy that gold, which at the time was $3.10. These wild swings are happening because the price of gold is famously highly variable, or highly volatile. It's a store of value of last resort that people tend to invest in when people are worried and have lower faith in even conventional risk-free assets like US Treasury bonds. Looking at the price of gold over the years, you'll see spikes in 1979 through 1980 caused by underlying inflation, the second oil shock, and the Iranian Revolution, as well as a spike in 2010 to 2011 driven by the Great Recession. Conversely, the price of gold nearly halved between just before the fall of the Soviet Union and 9/11, in a time characterized by optimism and expectations of economic stability and the end of history. You also have to consider the Bretton Woods system, which was central to the global economy from 1944-ish to the mid-70s-ish, and pegged the price of gold at $35 per troy ounce. That's why the price of college tuition as measured in gold rises from 1945 to 1970 as inflation and tuition hikes push the relative cost of college up as the price of gold remains nominally stable. Donald John Trump, the current US president, was born in June of 1946 and started at UPenn in 1966 at age 20, having finished the first 2 years of his tertiary education at Fordham. Had he been a Wharton student for all 4 of those years, tuition would have set him back around 6.3K, or around, at the time, 5.6 kilograms of gold. If he was working for McDonald's, which by the way, had introduced Ronald McDonald only the year prior for minimum wage, it would have taken him around 1,250 hours per year of tuition. Had he instead put that money into gold, that 5.6 kilos of gold would be worth around $680,000 in 2025. That's enough to send his son Barron to NYU Stern for just over 7.5 years at around 90K per year. And on the topic of the president, the, we'll say, uncertainty caused by his policies has caused the price of gold to rise. Although, to be fair, it's been on the up and up since early 2024. That's part of why, although tuition would have cost you nearly 4 kilos of gold in 2020, that price has dropped to just 2.2 kilos this year. So I suppose the moral of the story is to buy gold when the stock market is doing great and quote unquote history has ended, and to sell it when everyone else is panicking. The value of your degree in gold is highly dependent on when you got it, and if you want to make sure your grandkids will be able to pay their tuition, you better have at least 11 kilos of gold buried in your basement. Now, this is not an endorsement to buy gold now. In fact, I would say this is probably the worst time to buy gold because people are anxious and the price is going up. This is not financial advice, but I would suggest giving it a few years, wait for the price to come down, and buy the dip.